Now today let's talk about the Wehrmacht and the year 1943, because it's a very interesting year in many aspects, but often gets forgotten, because in 1942 you had Stalingrad and El Alamein, and in 1944 you have D-Day and Bagraton. So in both cases you have very interesting, very dramatic battles that are usually very well portrayed. Of course in 1943 there's Kursk, but it's back and forth. Now 1943 gets various different interpretations. For instance, Citino notes it's the forgotten year, das vergessene Kriegsjahr in German, or another historian notes it's the year of decisions, Tunis, Sicily, Kursk and the Battle of the Atlantic. And a German historian notes basically it was the year Defensive ohne Strategie, defensive without strategy, because there was no complete concept, no complete holistic strategic concept for the year, in contrast to 1939, 1940, 1941 and 1942. Now, there's a general staff examination in late 1942 about the upcoming year 1943, and the assessment is generally correct, but it's basically with a lot of instructions. Basically, we need to hold this, we need to take care of this, but not how it should be done. And in some ways it's completely off. For instance, it's capturing of Leningrad is in there. And basically the idea is victory can be achieved by holding what is already conquered, but not how to hold on to this. And also Hitler is basically said, nur kleine Haken schlagen, which means to only make small steps. Haken is basically what a rabbit does as evasive maneuvers when he's running away. So basically do only small important maneuvers. And it's very interesting, if you look at the Eastern Front, there's 19% of the losses occur in this time, but only 57% of the manpower is deployed. So usually there's the strong focus on the Eastern Front, but as you can see, actually, if you look at the manpower numbers, it's actually not that much that is deployed there. Then, of course, some argue, okay, we should retreat out of on the Eastern Front to have better defensive lines, to which Hitler basically says, no, that's not possible because we need the ore at Nikopol. And then later on, after Tunis, a lot of attention is put into the Mediterranean to prevent the second front from deploying. So major shift of the Luftwaffe to deploy to the Mediterranean, which at this point has about 30% of all the Luftwaffe bombers are deployed in the Mediterranean. And this is also Kursk, the Battle of Kursk, Operation Citadelle, the plan is to finish it before the invasion of Italy happens. And it's considered basically it's eine Verlegenheitsoperation, eine Quandary operation to a certain degree. So the whole Operation Citadelle, and there are a lot of myths about it. So first off, it was never intended as a strategic offensive. It was also, or it is debatable if it was the biggest tank battle in the Second World, in general, in the Second World War. There's, of course, also mentioned the Battle of Dubno, but today I looked in various of my better sources, and the problem is they often don't really mention Dubno, or at least don't state too much. So I'm not really certain. Maybe Kursk is really the biggest tank battle, and of course it always depends how you count and how to look at it. Another point is it was not a turning point. The German army was not completely destroyed, or the Panzer forces. They took losses, but they were far from being completely smashed, as often is proclaimed. Additionally, it was also not a lost victory, as Manstein sometimes proclaimed, because the point is, if you look at the whole situation, I think he proclaimed that you make a turn to the west and in the southern sector and capture some units there. The main problem here is the Soviets were already readying up the divisions for the counteroffensive, and this was about 130. And to give you some comparison, for Stalingrad it was 74 divisions ready for the counteroffensive. As you can see, even if they turned around before they moved to Italy and captured maybe in a pocket several Russian divisions or even corps, well, the Russians had plenty of reserves. So it's very unlikely that it would have been a victory at all at this point. Of course, what's very important here is with Kursk the psychological impact, because this was the first German summer offensive that failed. Because usually in 1941 you had a summer offensive and then in winter they stopped and then there was a counteroffensive. In 1942, same, but only on a smaller area, Case Blue, Fall Blau, on the southern sector. And again, attacking to Stalingrad and then counteroffensive. Again in winter. This time the attack happened in summer and it was stopped in the summer. So at this point, to a certain degree, even you could argue even the regular infantry or Panzermann saw, okay, it doesn't work anymore. There's something different now. Now, additionally, it was very important in 1943, in the air war, it was already showing what was going to come. There was a week-long bombing of Hamburg. In 1943, 2 times as much bombs were dropped as the previous years together. So it's basically a prelude to what is coming. In the naval war, in the Battle of the Atlantic, it's very interesting. Basically, Dönitz has now his 300 U-boats he wanted for 1939. And in the early beginning of 1943, the German U-boats inflicted heavy losses. But one problem is the U-boats were driven down further and further. Basically, there was only the mid-Atlantic gap left where the airplanes were not there. Everywhere else, air patrols were flying. Of course, it's very important to note, until this point, basically, airplanes didn't destroy too much U-boats, but they drove them down. They had to submerge. This would later on change, or rather soon, that the airplanes became lethal against submarines. And from February to March, there was the high point of the Wolfpack campaigns. And this was due to very good German intelligence, which is often ignored because everyone says, oh, Ultra, they knew everything, the Allies knew everything anyway. Well, yeah, it's a bit of oversimplification. The German had very good intelligence and also very good coordination with the submarines. So often they knew where the convoys were. And at this point, they also had so many Wolfpacks out there that if the Allies changed the course of a convoy, well, there was another Wolfpack in the way. Yet, in May 1943, the highest losses of U-boats. 41 U-boats lost in 1 month. And this is basically when Dönitz says, okay, we need to pull the U-boats out. And some historians basically at this point stop writing about the Battle of the Atlantic, as Milner notes in some cases. Okay, here the Battle of the Atlantic ends for some. So here you could say here's probably what could arguably be one turning point, definitely. Because, I mean, it's also very interesting that the highest losses, merchant losses, happen in 1943, and then immediately afterwards, a few months later, the highest U-boat losses. So this is quite interesting that in a few months this major shift. Now, of course, you probably want to know why the battle in the Atlantic shifted so fast. Well, it was basically the end of several developments. First off, radio direction finding was finally small enough to put regularly on ships, on escort ships. So they could also easily now find the Wolfpacks, which needed to send out information regularly for coordination with the headquarters. Then radar was now also very common on planes and on escort ships. So the usual U-boat tactic to attack first at night didn't work out because with radar now they could easily be spotted. And the Allies also deployed support groups. So basically, if they saw there was a Wolfpack coming up on one of their convoys, they sent additional escorts to provide support. And then the mid-Atlantic air gap was also being more and more closed with the help of escort carriers and also with very long range aircraft like the B-24 Liberator. Then also in terms of weapons, Hedgehogs were deployed and Torpex depth charges. So Torpex is a stronger high explosive, so the depth charges got more deadly, and also operations research. So they put various analysis and everything, and they concluded, okay, if we have larger convoys, we lose less ships in general, and other recommendations, and they were employed. Now, personally, I would call 1943 not the Wehrmacht retreats like Citino does. I'm more with the defensive without strategy, and I would basically call it the Wehrmacht reacts. So basically the initiative is gone and the Wehrmacht just trying to hold on to the conquered elements, but not with a certain plan, as he already noted. And it basically is due to this preventing a second front in Italy. Then at Kursk, it was basically, not really a major plan there, and they stopped and pulled back. Italy happened and Kursk, okay, we stop and we pull back. And also if you look at Mussolini in July 1943, he gets dismissed and then he gets reinstated in September after he's basically liberated by the German troops. And generally, if we look at the Mediterranean, the Deutsche Afrika Korps, the Afrika Korps, was also basically a reaction to a call for help from Mussolini to prevent Italy from falling out of the Axis early on. So this is the general issue with the Mediterranean. That Germany basically always reacts there. It reacts with sending Rommel, it reacts then with sending more bombers once Tunis is lost, and it also reacts basically putting Mussolini in charge again. And also, interrupts the Battle of Kursk, because the Allies show up in Sicily. So, this were hopefully a useful overview on the year of 1943 and the German approach to it. And as always, sources in the description. Thank you for watching and see you next time.